Well, good morning, good morning. This is the lovely podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan. This is episode 11, and this one is a little different because I'm not going to read every little thing. I'm just going to hit on some highlights. This is about the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, also known as Teamsters Union. It was founded in 1903. It is headquartered in Washington, D.C., It has a little over 1.3 million members as of 2015. And just to kind of give a brief summary of this, because I was reading over all of it in a podcast episode, but I thought this is just too thick and dense to really go over every little thing. But they have a very unique history, and here's why. Some of their history stems back to Chicago, Illinois. And for those that are living outside the United States and are not aware of Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois is known for corruption. It has been known for that for over 100 years. And so this particular union has had a lot of problems with corruption, especially in the beginning. Because back in the day, around the turn of the century in the 1900s, corruption was kind of an everyday life there in Chicago. And I'll give an example. There's a book written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle called The Dancing Men. And it's a series of books about a fictional character called Sherlock Holmes. And one of his adventures is The Dancing Men. And in this book, it references the crime families that are in charge in Chicago, Illinois. And there's this young woman who left her family, went on like a coach tour or something back in those days, and she met someone, an older gentleman. She fell in love with him. But however, her corrupt family pretty much had promised her to a guy in another family or something. It was really kind of sick, but that's how corruption is, especially towards women. And so they came after her and tried to kill her. And so if you want to see a really good representation of that book. I love the BBC version. There's a guy, I think his name is Jeremy, I can't remember his last name, but there's a Sherlock Holmes series that was done in the 1970s and 1980s by the BBC. Really excellent, one of my favorites. That show would broadcast on OETA, which is Channel 13, which is PBS, Public Broadcasting Station in Oklahoma. And that's how we got to see that show, and it was so neat. I think the BBC, a lot of British companies, they really do a great job of those type of shows. It's just really impressive because I think they're one of the best even to this day, even though they were filmed in the 70s and 80s. They got really great actors. They had really great geographical sets, and it was just really a good show. But if you want to see a really good representation of how Chicago corruption can travel overseas, that is a great episode to watch. And again, it's called The Dancing Men. And so I mention that because corruption was very commonplace in Chicago back then, and corruption is still a problem in Chicago. Like, if Chicago didn't have corruption, I would think, what happened to the city? Did it shut down? Because it's so common. And that's very unfortunate, but it does happen. And what I found kind of funny was one of the first presidents, his name is Cornelia Shea, of this union. He got in trouble when he was trying to get reelected. Like, it came out that he was basically living at a brothel and he was having an affair with a 19-year-old waitress. I just busted out laughing when I read that because I just thought, what else is new? You know, but also I guess for people that maybe don't understand how things were back then, it was commonplace for very powerful men to have their mistress. And an example of this would be John F. Kennedy Jr.'s dad, I guess. Yeah, I guess that would be his dad. His dad had a long-term affair with this one woman. I can't remember her name. But he would bring her along. He would find a way to bring her along on family trips and just, have her stay in a separate room. And there was one time, I think it was an actress was this one, and this priest kind of called Mr. Kennedy out on this. John F. Kennedy Jr.'s dad called him out on it and said, hey, you can't be bringing her along on your little cruise ship vacations with your family. and just have her in a separate room. This needs to stop. So what I'm saying is that, whether it's 1903 or 1943, these very powerful men just basically gave themselves permission to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, but it was really bad in Chicago because there was embezzlement. You could buy someone off, you could pay someone off, or you could bump them off, whatever floated your boat back then. It was very corrupt. So this union had a lot of corruption, and it's gone through the ringer. And then it had some more scandals and corruption with the next president, which was President Tobin for the Teamsters. His members complained that he wasn't allowing them to be democratic. He was strong-arming his members, things of that nature. Of course, he angrily denies it, which of course he would, because he's not going to lose face. And so, it's one of those things that organized crime had a really big influence on this union, but the reason why was because of where this union started, and plus some of the members that joined and moved up into positions of power. So, this union is not, I don't think it is as corrupt as it used to be, because I think when you get new people in there, that's a really good thing to do. It's almost like whenever we re-elect a president or we elect a new president, every 4 or 8 years, depending on what we decide as a country in the United States, sometimes it's nice to just clean house. And I think that's what this union tried to do multiple times, and probably still trying to do. Make sure that you get some new blood in there. Get some new ideas, and also don't just let certain people stay in power for long periods of time, because otherwise it's turning into a dictatorship, and that's not what anybody needs whatsoever. But this union, again, started in 1903. It survived the Great Depression. It survived World War II, and it was going strong even after that. I mean, they still have some problems here and there with different things, and I think it comes from from the top down. Because if you have a corrupt president of any organization, you are going to have problems, because who do you think they're going to put in charge of different things? Like, it's very important to really be sure of who you're hiring and who you are electing, because President Shea, there were several times that people tried to, not get him elected, and they did that by not voting for him, but he still had people voting for him. So I look at it this way, that whole scandal that came out about him cheating on his wife and living at a brothel and having a 19-year-old mistress, there were still people that voted for him. I mean, what does that say about the people that voted for him? That just is laughable right there. It's like, if that's considered okay behavior, then what is considered bad behavior? Whenever you vote for someone, they need to have that character. They need to have good character, good morals, good values, and they need to have just that presence of presidency, if that's, what they're being elected to. You need to make sure you have the right guy, and not just because they have a lot of power or a lot of money, or they can strong arm people and things of that nature. But I did want to read some of this down when it focuses on political donations. It says, the Teamsters Union is one of the largest labor unions in the world, as well as the 11th largest campaign contributor in the United States. While they supported Republicans Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush for president in the 1980s, they have begun leaning largely toward the Democrats in recent years. They have donated 92% of their a little over $24 million in contributions since 1990 to the Democratic Party. Though the union opposed former President George W. Bush's agenda to open U.S. highways to Mexican truckers, it did previously support Bush's platform for oil drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The Teamsters Union endorsed Barack Obama for the 2008 Democratic nomination on February 20th, 2008. In 2016, the presidential election, the Teamsters endorsed Hillary Clinton on August 26, 2016. It says here, the Teamsters Union also makes an annual contribution to Friends of Sinn Féin. I don't know what that is. The U.S. fundraising arm of Irish Republican Party Sinn Féin. That is a little concerning. An Irish Republican Party? I don't even know what that is. I've never heard of it. But my personal opinion as usual is they should not be donating monies to anybody, whether it's a Republican campaign or Democratic campaign, because that is $24 million that can be used for their members. Like one thing I thought of the other day when I was thinking about these different unions and how to help them get better is that whenever they have membership dues like that, and you're talking millions of dollars, what I would do if I was in charge of one of those unions, or even if I was just a member of a union, I would mention that, hey, instead of donating to a political campaign, why don't we use those monies to help our members? Basically, like if their health insurance isn't covering everything, and let's say they need a chemotherapy drug, then why not help them pay for that drug? There's obviously millions of dollars in the bank. And those are just the dollars that are used that they're contributing to political campaigns. So they probably have way more monies than that available. See, that's the thing. Like, that's just the dollar amount that we know of that is going towards political campaigns. Like, those are monies that they have allotted or allocated for spending on political donations, but that doesn't mean that's the only money that they have. They probably have way more money than that, millions of dollars. And I think that if they really cared about their members, they would help them get their medicines and medications that they need. They would help them with housing. Let's say, for example, there's someone, in this union, and let's say there was a house fire. And let's say their insurance doesn't want to cover everything, and I'm not dissing insurance companies, not by any means, because I'm actually a licensed insurance agent, but, let's say, for example, the insurance company doesn't want to pay out on the policy, or they've found some stipulation, who knows what. And so now this member is without a house, and they need to find a place to live. I think it would be way more beneficial if the union would use some of those millions of dollars to help a fellow union member find a home. And I'm not saying spend millions of dollars just on one person. Let's say, for example, their home cost $150K. Well, I think it would be a good idea if the union partnered up with like Habitat for Humanity and said, hey, we want to help one of our union members get a new house because their house burned down. We would like to help pay, we'll pay for half, would you help with this? So basically the union would donate $75,000 and Habitat for Humanity would donate $75,000, and then maybe they could have a weekend or a couple weekends out of a month that they go out and help build this house, or they could also probably hire private contractors or even union contractors that can help build their house, because there are different types of unions out there, whether it's construction, roofing, laying cement, whatever the case may be. That's what I'm talking about when, unions have a place in our society. I just wish they operated and functioned better to actually help the union members, especially when they are in distress. Because I look at it this way, when you're paying into a union, it's almost like when you're paying for a health insurance policy. You've put your dues in. You're paying for that. So why not get something out of it? And I'll give an example. I've probably mentioned this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. When the cost of my health insurance went up drastically because of stupid Obamacare, and then made my health insurance policy illegal, which is total BS. I don't like that. Excuse my language, but it put a huge strain on me with that. It was horrible. And the health insurance that the government was trying to provide was lousy and was not beneficial to me at all at that point in my life, and still is not beneficial to me at this point in my life. But anyway, so I look at it this way. When the cost of my health insurance went up hundreds of dollars, I started looking at my health insurance differently. So instead of looking at it as it's just a catastrophe policy, I have this just in case something happens and it's just there, When it went up in price by hundreds of dollars, I really started reading my policy, and I was like, I'm going to start using this thing. So I started using more healthcare services because of the cost of my health insurance. So I started making appointments with an OBGYN, and I always made sure to get a mammogram, which I used to never get done. So even though I was in my 30s, when I started getting this stuff done, I was like, I'm going to start using every part of this policy because I'm paying for it, and I want to get my money's worth. That's just how I look at it. So I started getting mammograms. I was already getting annuals, but here's another thing with that. So instead of going to like a local doctor or just kind of how do I word this properly? Instead of going to a doctor that maybe has like a not as nice a practice, and I don't mean that negatively, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to one of the most expensive OBGYNs. That's what I'm going to do because I'm paying so much money. So now I get my annual exams done by OBGYNs that are like extra certified and stuff. They're really good at their job, and they have a really fancy waiting room. They have really nice equipment, and, you know, they're just way better than just, I don't know how else to say it, but it's better than going to like your local health department. Well, what's the right word? Your county health department is the right word. Because women know there are places that are gross to go to. You don't go there, but you kind of go in between the expensive doctors and the low-end doctors. So I thought, well, I'm going to start going to some really expensive doctors since I'm paying so much for my health insurance. And guess what? My health actually improved because I started seeing better doctors. And they started giving me better health care services. And they started diagnosing me properly and started taking me more seriously than these other doctors that were not as educated and did not care as much. And their waiting rooms were gross. And I'm like, now I don't ever go to a place if a waiting room is gross, and if it is, I get up and leave, and I just say, hey, I have to leave, I apologize, you know, please cancel my appointment this time, and, you know, if I can reschedule, I'll call you back, you know. But and I typically don't reschedule with places like that, but, you know, I got a better doctor for an OBGYN. I actually went to go see a foot doctor about a problem I had been having for a while because I'm a runner. Because I used to never go see, I think it's called a podiatrist, if I'm not mistaken. And I really started using my health insurance. I was like, hey, this is awesome. I'm actually getting way better care. This is really good because I'm already paying for it. And I have been paying for it for several years since Obamacare went up, or the cost of my insurance went up. And so because of Obamacare, I'd already been paying in my dues, as they say. So I went to see a foot doctor. And then I never go see a dermatologist, but I was like, you know what, I want to go see a dermatologist, even though I have pretty flawless skin at this point because I don't have cystic acne as bad as I used to. I maybe get like 1 or 2 outbreaks a year in terms of cystic acne for whatever reason. And so it's really good to go see a dermatologist once a year because they can catch a mole or any kind of skin lesion early, and they can just go ahead and remove it. So that's really good. So, you know, you're getting checked out for skin cancer. So, you know, and I run outside as well, and I love to tan, so might as well get checked out on that. And, I started seeing an eye doctor every year. You know, I actually go see 2 different types of eye doctors. I see an ophthalmologist and an optometrist, if I can pronounce that correctly. Ophthalmologist is an MD. They are ones that can actually perform eye surgery on you. Optometrists are ones that help you do your eye exams, and they get you fitted for glasses as well. Optometrists are really good if you just need to get your foot in the door with like a eye surgeon, because sometimes they have to do referrals. So I just go see both. And it's 2 totally different people, and they take really good care of my eyes. I think that's great. Because there was one time I had a really bad infection in my eye, but I didn't know what was going on with it. I had optic iritis, which is inflammation of the front of the eye. It is excruciatingly painful, and so they don't know what causes it. This is just in general in the medical community. All they know is that typically it's because you have a virus of some sort, and it is attacking the front of your eye. And they don't know the name of the virus, you know, nothing like that. It's just, you have inflammation, we need to treat it so that way no permanent damage is done. So every once in a while I have a flare-up of optic iritis, particularly in my left eye. And I can tell when it's flaring up because it's like I'll get sick with like a cold or even like a sinus infection. And I know that's usually when whatever it is flares up in my left eye, and it gets really painful really quick. And what really sucks is when I have that happen and then I have a migraine on top of it. It's like I can't leave my house. It's really excruciatingly painful, especially with the eyes. So I'm trying to think of anything else doctor-wise that I went to go see. I'm trying to think what else. Can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But it's funny, like in the D's in my phone on my address book, it just started filling up with all these doctors. You know, because I started really using my health insurance policy. I was like, well, if I'm paying for it, I'm going to use it. And I just wanted to make sure that, I'm getting the most bang for my buck. And what's nice about that is it creates ownership. Because that policy I pay for and pay a lot of money for, it is mine. Like, I pay my dues. I think we should have the same mindset if we are members in a union. So if you're in a union, which I am not, but if you are, I think you should take a look at what is the charter statement for your union, what is the constitution that they have written for your union, and really look at your membership benefits is what it's called. And really see how it personally benefits you. Not just the country, not just the union, not some political action, not some stupid cause. How does it affect you personally? Because you're the one who's paying the bills for that union. Just like I'm paying the bills for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma. Because that's the health insurance policy I have. And I'm not dissing them by any means. Not by any means, because I'm truly grateful for them. But, it's one of those things that because of Obamacare, they squeezed out so many insurance companies out of Oklahoma. So I can only get either United or Blue Cross Blue Shield. And because Obamacare squeezed out all these other health insurance companies, it raised the rates tremendously because there's not as much competition. So whose fault is that? I don't completely blame United or Blue Cross Blue Shield. I blame that law, and I blame the federal government for messing with my health insurance. And also, they're messing with everybody else's health insurance. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's the same principle. So if you're in a union, I would very much be aware of what is going on with your money because you're paying dues. And if you're part of a union and you're a non-paying member, I would strongly encourage you to be a paying member. Because I think that if you're going to be a part of something, you should be a part of it 100%. Like, you should be fully vetted. You should be fully invested in it. Because I think that, number one, you'll get more bang for your buck. And number two, you'll have more fellowship. And you'll be more involved in things. Because I look at it this way. Like when I go to the church that I go to, if I only go once a month, once a year, yeah, I'm technically a member, but I'm not really interested. I'm not really participating. And it's kind of like, what's the point of participating in something if you're not really going to participate, if you're not going to be aware of what's going on? Like the church I go to, I've grown quite a bit in my faith. And one of the ways I've grown my faith is I've gotten involved in fellowship there, but outside of the worship service. So I've gotten involved with a couple of different Bible studies. I've met new people. I volunteer. I help out with baptisms. I just have really grown in terms of how I view my relationship with Christ, but also how I view my relationship with other people. And I think that if you are a non-paying member in a union, I think you're missing out on fellowship. I really do. And I think your life will be better and more enriched if you are a paying member of your union. Because I think that, it's important that you get the most out of it. And that also, not only do you get the most out of it, but you put the most into it. It's not just money, but it's your presence, it's your ideas, it's your good stewardship, and basically goodwill towards other men and women and children. Goodwill towards your fellow man, as they say. And I think that when you believe in something, you should want to be more active in it. And I don't mean more active in like an aggressive picketing kind of way and any kind of corruption or embezzlement or things like that. But it just means that, you basically put your money where your mouth is, and I don't mean that negatively, but in a way, that's what we do in everyday life. When we purchase a house and we're paying a mortgage, we're putting our money where our mouth is, and that money is going towards the bank because we bought a house. And so when we say, I bought a house, I have a mortgage, you're putting your money where your mouth is, because you're paying for your mortgage. It's the same thing when you buy a car. If you're taking out a loan on a car from a bank or a credit union or whatever the case may be, or a private financier, you're putting your money where you're talking about it, so to speak. When you say, I have a new car, well, you're putting your money where your mouth is because you're paying that bank to basically help you finance that car. It's the same thing with unions. And I think that if you really want to make a big difference in society and you are part of a union, go ahead and be a paying member of your union and get more involved and really learn the ins and outs of your organization. Because here's the thing, when you invest in something, you typically care more about it, if that makes sense. Look at it from like a stockbroker point of view. If you are investing in stocks, are you going to be more aware, when you purchase just a few stocks, or are you going to be more aware of when you purchase thousands of shares of a stock? What is your level of interest? That kind of thing. So that's how I view it. And again, my rationality comes from, purchasing my own health insurance and seeing the cost of it being driven up by stupid Obamacare and creeping socialism in terms of socialized medicine. But I think that even so, we all have a responsibility to be good stewards of whatever we invest in, whether we invest it with our time, our money, or, whatever ideas that we can bring to the table. Because, it's important that when you get involved in something, that you truly believe in it, and that you want to see the common good, and that you want things to work out well and in a peaceful manner. So that's just kind of a side note with that. But anyway, this union, it has a rough beginning. It's had some rough years, but they still have a lot of members. The biggest thing that I don't like is, donations going to political campaigns, whether it's Democrat or Republican. I just don't agree with that. Again, I think those funds should be used elsewhere. I think they should be used specifically for the members in everyday life, like things that they need help with, like immediately. I'll give another example. Let's say, for example, you have a union member whose wife is really ill, just got diagnosed with breast cancer, and she needs help paying for that. Let's say they have great health insurance. Let's say health insurance is doing really good, but it still doesn't cover all the treatments, because cancer treatments can be very expensive, whether it's with radiology, oncology, the chemotherapy drugs, things of that nature, the tests that they get, or maybe she needs to be on one of those experimental drugs. Things like that. Things cost money. Whether we like it or not, things cost money. And I've learned to look at money in a positive way, because I think it's easy to have a bitter concept of money when you're poor and broke. And I have been poor and broke in my life, but I made sure to not get bitter and to not ever get jealous of anyone. If anything, I wanted to be better. I wanted to make more money. I wanted to be so successful that I didn't need to worry about my bills ever again. And the only way you're going to think that way is to have the appropriate mindset towards money. So, if I can leave you with this piece of advice on this episode, it would be that the appropriate way to view money is not, oh, I've got to pay for this now? Why is it so expensive? I can't stand this. I hate this. This is horrible. Not that. It should be, I can pay for this. I am a responsible adult. I make enough money. If I need to make more money, I will. I am prosperous in everything I do. I am happy. I am blessed. And I always put my best foot forward. And I'll give an example of this. Like there was a time that I used to go out with some friends, and they had money, but I did not. We were not in the same income level. And it bothered me only when we went out to eat. Because I didn't have the courage to say, I can't afford to eat here. And so I changed my mindset, and I said, I can afford to eat anywhere I want. Money is not an issue. And when I changed my mindset, I looked at my money differently. So if I knew I was going to go out with some friends and, they wanted to go to an expensive restaurant, which wasn't all the time. I don't mean they were hoity-toity, but, sometimes they like rich food, and I'm not a huge fan of rich food. But what I did was, instead of thinking, oh no, we're going out, not making enough money, I forced myself to stop thinking that way. And I forced myself to think, I am prosperous, I am talented, I am educated, there's nothing wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with this situation, the world is my oyster, I can go out to eat wherever I want, whenever I want. So when I did go out to eat, I just forced myself to not focus on the price on the menu. I looked at it as, what do I actually enjoy eating? If I want to eat a roasted chicken, I would buy that. If I wanted to eat a steak, I would buy it. And what I would do is I would save up money to go out to certain restaurants or certain movies or things like that. And over time, I didn't worry about money anymore. See, when you're used to being poor and broke, you tend to have this negative concept of money, and you keep telling yourself, I can't do that, I can't do this, I'm frustrated. You have to change the record that's playing in your brain, like literally in your mind. Because sometimes what's going on in your mind is your worst enemy. So I started speaking phrases of favor and blessing and prosperity over my life, and then my entire world changed. I started looking at things differently. I started investing in myself. Like I opened a savings account. I started looking at companies differently. Like just for the fun of it, I would look up very successful companies online, like on Wikipedia, and I would look at how are they performing each year, and then I would look at their stocks online. I would see how are they performing there. And even though I couldn't always buy into those stocks, I still wanted to be aware of businesses and be aware of the economy. And so that grew my financial education, and it really helped me to have financial analysis skills that I didn't have before. And it's because I looked at money as a tool, not as lack of money as a burden. So I looked at it this way. I had to change my mind, and what I did was I told myself, well, if I'm at the bottom, the only place I can go is up. So I might as well look up and just go for it, keep my chin up. And what happened was, over time, my posture improved. Like I started walking with my head up, because I was always, I shouldn't say always, but I got into a bad habit of walking with my head down, shoulders humped over, and just not having a very positive impression of myself because I wasn't happy with my life. And so I had to change that. And one of the things was having a positive mindset and changing how I viewed and looked at money. That is probably one of the biggest things that you can do in your life, is to change your mindset. And then whatever mindset you have, you can then bring that positivity to any organization that you are involved in. Whether you are involved in a union, or if you work for the government, which is the public sector, or if you work in the private sector for an employer. Regardless of what job you have, or regardless of what type of industry you're in, the biggest thing that you can bring to the table is your positive mindset. Because I think one of the number one things that any employer is looking for is someone that has a good head on their shoulders, and they don't look at a problem as just a problem and, oh, we can't handle it, what are we going to do? But they see it as a challenge. And they want to see someone that says, I like a challenge, I can handle that. I want to learn and I want to grow, and I want to knock that puppy out of the ballpark. I love baseball, so I tend to refer to things like that. But that's how my mindset is. So you have to cultivate that. So, as I go through these podcasts and these episodes, I guess I will mention different books that I've read over the years that have helped me and helped change my life and helped me grow in a leadership role, which I think is really good for anyone, because regardless of whether or not you're a manager, technically you are in a leadership role because you are in charge of your life. Even if you're married, or even if you're not married, or whatever your circumstances are, your life belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It belongs to you. And the way that you know that is that your rights belong to you. Whether it's workers' rights or citizens' rights or constitutional rights or state labor rights, whatever the case may be, you as an individual are just that. You are an individual, but you're also part of society, and you are also part of any organization that you join. So whenever you join an organization, even if you're starting out at the bottom, don't view yourself as bottom of the barrel labor or bottom of the barrel talent. That is not true. That is an absolute lie. Just because you're starting out somewhere, that doesn't mean you are less competent than somebody else. If anything, you might be just as competent or more competent than somebody else. But sometimes in order to get your foot in the door with jobs, organizations, you have to start somewhere. And what I tell people, and what I often remind myself, is just let your light shine. Because how else are people going to know what you're capable of and what you like to do, unless you let your light shine. So that is my suggestion and advice for this. So, kind of regardless of your circumstances, keep pushing forward regardless of the bad news in this world. Let's use this union as an example, the Teamsters Union. I think what kept this union going forward was the fact they still had good people in it. Yes, they had corruption. Yes, they had embezzlement. Yes, they had some really shady stuff going on. But they've been around for 18 years? Like, if it was just completely corrupt, completely awful, they would lose their charter. But this union obviously has good people in it. And who have, good intentions. I don't know why they have this stupid saying that one bad apple can ruin the whole barrel. That's not always true. And this is a very good example. Yes, they have had some bad apples, but it didn't ruin everybody, and it didn't ruin everything. And we know that because some of their members got really pissed off about stuff. And if anything, that shows you that they did have morals and values, even in the beginning. But, sometimes, I look at it this way, sometimes you don't know what your leader is going to do until they start exercising their power and they start making decisions. That's the thing. You're never going to know everything about somebody. Say, for example, like the President of the United States, whether it's Biden or Trump or Franklin D. Roosevelt, whoever, you're not going to know everything about a candidate, even if you go digging for it, which I think is stupid. Everybody has flaws. Everybody makes bad decisions. But also, everybody makes good decisions. So it's kind of those things, sometimes you don't know what someone's going to do until they're in that position. So really, when you're voting for somebody, or even when you're working for somebody, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt to start with. Like with me, whenever I start working for someone or with somebody, I wipe the slate clean, and I just let the relationship grow. And you just get to know each other, and you just live life. That's how it is, regardless of what kind of relationship it is, where it's private, personal, professional, clerical, who knows what, business. You have to give things a chance. Like, even though I didn't vote for President Biden, he is still the President of the United States, and I honor and respect him. And, I pray for him. And I pray for his employees and his staff, because even though I didn't vote for him, I still wish the best for him, if that makes sense. So regardless of who's in power and who you work for and things of that nature, it's better to come to the table with a positive attitude and a positive mindset than the opposite. Because otherwise, you could possibly bring in more trouble than good ideas. And I would rather be around people that, hey, they just say it like it is. Hey, I don't like what's going on, but, let's work through it. Let's make this better. I'd rather have something better than something worse, if that makes sense. But anyway, that is it for today's podcast. And I actually was going to let you know that I have a new email address. I created this specifically for this podcast, just in case someone wants to email as well. You have two options. You can go directly through the podcast website where you clicked on to listen to this. You can say contact me, and there's a button there, or you can email me directly, and it is yourlaborlaws@gmail.com, and that's Y as in yo-yo, O as in octopus, U as in umbrella, or R as in rover, and then labor laws, and that's laws with an S @gmail.com. So feel free to email me anytime there as well. As soon as I get it, I will respond. That is always a good thing. So, but until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, and that you are very blessed and prosperous in everything that you do. So until next time, have a good one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.